Hi guys, James at RampantLionReviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to stick to Japan and we're going to return to a brewery that's featured on the channel once before. Now, the last beer that I tried from these guys was one of their core range beers, a very solid take on the old school West Coast IPAs, which I really enjoyed. But for this review today, we are going to go to the opposite end of the spectrum and do something on the darker side. So this particular beer is one that I've heard very good things about. It's another one of the beers that I spoke about in other videos that kind of got pushed to the back of the cupboard and then forgotten about, but it is a style that is one that you can age for a few years. So this beer should still be pretty good. So needless to say, I'm very curious to see what this one's going to have in store for us. Hopefully it's another good beer. Hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and as always, I hope that you guys watching enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, we're going to head a little bit north of me here in Osaka to Tokyo, the Japanese capital. We're going to go to the Itabashi district, which is in the kind of northern part of the city, and that means that we're going to have a look at another beer from Tokyo Aleworks. So this particular beer is called Smashing Imperialism. It comes in at 9% ABV, it's an Imperial Stout, and it's also brewed in collaboration with the English metal band Napalm Death. So yeah, this should be quite interesting. At 9% ABV, it is on the lower end of the alcohol scale for an Imperial Stout, but 9% Imperial Stouts aren't unheard of in Japan. Normally the ones in Europe and America tend to be about 10% or above, but yeah, you will find 9%ers here in Japan that are called Imperial Stouts, but they tend to be pretty good actually. I've always quite enjoyed the Japanese Imperial Stouts. Probably one of my favourite ones would be the Imperial Stout from Mino Beer here in Osaka, and of course you've got quite a few good ones from Shigakogen Beer as well actually, so they're definitely worth checking out if you get the chance. But it turns out that this was the very first beer that I ever bought from Tokyo Aleworks, but it just kind of disappeared, and we reviewed the Tasty IPA back in April, I think it was, if memory serves me correctly. So that was quite interesting to try, and I did enjoy that. So definitely cool to try something from the darker end of the spectrum. As I often say, if you want to try beers from a brewery, try something at the dark end, try something from the light end, and if you have the chance of a sour beer as well, that'll give you a good idea of what a brewery is all about. But yeah, let's crack on with this one then and see how we go on. The Smashing Imperialism, something we can all agree with, at 9% ABV, an Imperial Stout from Tokyo Aleworks in Itabashi, Tokyo here in Japan. So, as always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting though, just fast forward. All the usual links can be found in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Tokyo Aleworks so far, and hopefully we can add some more to that list at some point in the near future. I was also invited by the guys to go up and check out the brewery, so that's something I need to do the next time I find myself in Tokyo. Keep your eyes peeled for that. We'll do an out and about video and a meet the brewery with these guys probably at some stage. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The support that you give is massively appreciated. And remember, you can go into the channel homepage and search for beer based on the geography tagging system. So just go in there, use the little search bar, put in your hometown, state, county, province, whatever you like. If I've reviewed beers from the area that you search for, they will pop up. Failing that, you can check out the playlist of beers from different countries. You'll find this one in the Japanese playlist along with a number of other things, and that is being added to quite regularly at the moment. And do make sure you check out the playlist of beers from other countries. There are some really interesting things on the channel these days. But yeah, let's go on to my brewery notes then, and I'll tell you a wee bit about Tokyo Aleworks again for the second time. So, Tokyo Aleworks, as I've mentioned to you already, are based in the Itabashi area in the north of Tokyo, and the two men behind the daily running of the brewery are Bob Stockwell and Randy Carncross. So Bob is originally from a small town called Glen Falls in upstate New York, and he first went to Japan in 1996 as a high school student, but he also had a passion for kendo and decided to return to Japan as an exchange student in Akasa in Saitama Prefecture, which is also very close to Tokyo, just over to the west, if I remember correctly. And the reason that he went there was because a number of the schools had kendo clubs, but his time there prompted him to return to Japan and study at the University of Tsukuba. And at university, one of his kendo classmates was a fan of whiskey and invited Bob to drink whiskey with him, and he, of course, got really into this and went on to become a sort of aficionado, like most Scottish people tend to be. But later, he managed to land a job as a brand ambassador for Macallan, and he insisted that they send him to Scotland to learn about distilling, which they did. So a little after this, he was approached by Diageo, and they sent him to learn more at Talisker, Ardbeg and Glenmorangie, and during this time he discovered an interest in craft beer. So he dreamed of having his own distillery one day, but he was a bit daunted by the minimum of 3 years aging before you could actually sell anything, and also the level of investment required for the infrastructure of the distillery. But he wanted to learn more about brewing beer as well. So he befriended the team at local beer in Chiba, and he learned to brew under the guidance of Momoyo Kagitani. But toward the end of 2017, the Itabashi-based company Scotch Malt Sales, who are an importer of Scotch whisky, were looking to start a craft brewery that allowed fans to brew beer on a small pilot system. So they knew Bob from the industry and envisioned him as the educator, and they also valued his technical expertise, but he needed assistance to run the brewery, and this was the point where Randy came in. So Bob and Randy had known each other because they both frequented and worked part-time at Tokyo Devilcraft, and so Randy came to Japan in the JET program, but actually studied to be a teacher in Buffalo, New York. But after 3 years in Osaka on the JET program, he moved up to Tokyo, and after a few more years of teaching, he was determined to turn his interest in craft beer into his profession. And so in 2013, he invested in the Hangover Craft Beer Bar in the Nakano area, and then went on to work at Devilcraft, and then in 2015, he invested in a new bar called Hopscotch. But in early 2018, Bob approached him to come on board at Tokyo Aleworks, and this gave him the full-time opportunity that he really wanted. So the brewery started their operations toward the end of 2018, and they started off with a 7-barrel brewing system for the larger brews and a 1-barrel kit for smaller batches. But they've also got several homebrew kits that are for fans to use, and for about 50,000 Japanese yen, which is, that's probably about $450 these days, American, something like that. People can brew 2 cases of beer, and this is why the company logo is, or at least the original one said Komino Brewing, and it was under the Tokyo skyline. But the tap room attached to the brewery has 22 taps of mainly house brewed beers, and it's known for its burgers and its pizza, so somewhere that I really would enjoy. But these days they've got another tap room in Yarakucho, which is close to the Imperial Palace, and as of December 2023, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced around 270 different kinds of beer according to Untappd. And they are a very well-rounded brewery. They do lots and lots of different styles, and yeah, this is one place that I do need to go and check out the next time I'm up in Tokyo. I've seen most of the touristy stuff in Tokyo, so I think I'd need to go up there and just plan a few days and do one brewery a day and do some filming. That would be quite a nice little trip to do, so we'll see about making that happen at some point in the next year or two. So keep your eyes peeled for some Tokyo out and about videos. But yeah, that is everything I can really tell you about Tokyo Aleworks for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website, you can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all of the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, let's go on then and actually have a little look at the beer itself. So as you can see, this one, I think it's 350 milliliters, because that's quite common in Japan. Does it say on the side? Yeah, no, it's 330. So yeah, quite uncommon actually to have the 330 as opposed to the 350, but you can see the artwork on this one is quite nice, and you've got the hop flower with its crown being smashed. Napalm Death, as I mentioned to you, are an English band, so I wonder if this is a little tongue-in-cheek reference to the British monarchy, and of course I'm not the biggest fan of them being Scottish. But yeah, there you go, you can see the Tokyo Aleworks bottle cap. I'll need to keep that actually, because I don't have one of the bottle caps, and these guys are canning the vast majority of their beer now, so I think it's quite a rare thing, so this will need to get kept. But yeah, really nice artwork on this one, I have to say. But yeah, 9% Imperial Stout. It didn't tell you anything about what hops or what malts and things were used in this one. So yeah, I might just pause the recording there and have a wee check on the website and see if we can find anything. Just hold on a wee second. Alright guys, yeah, after a little quick second check there was absolutely nothing about it. All it says is that it's an Imperial Stout brewed in collaboration with Napalm, which we've said already. So yeah, let's go on and actually have a little taste of the beer and see what it's all about. I'm going to be very careful with this bottle cap because, like I say, I do want to keep this one because I think I'm not going to find a Tokyo Aleworks bottle cap these days. I think I've done okay with that. It's got 2 little dents in it, but it should be okay. But yeah, not too much in the way of smoke on the opening with this one. It does say, I'm not sure if this is a best before date or a bottled on date. I think it was bottled on the 10th of June 2021. So this beer is like 2 years old at this point. But as I say, with an Imperial Stout, you can afford to age these a little bit and they should still be fine. A little bit of sediment in the bottom of the bottle there, and I don't see much having gone into the glass either, so hopefully it's aged fairly well. So yeah, as you can see, let's just sugar this up a bit and see if we can get a little bit ahead, because not much has formed just on the pour there. But yeah, you can see that this beer's poured pretty much black as night, as you would expect. So remember, the colour of your beer is dependent on a few things. One, the type of malts that you use. This goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. Two, length of your wort boil is also going to play a role, because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you get a darker colour of beer. But any barrel aging you do or any adjuncts you put into the beer will affect its colour too. But when it comes to black beers like Imperial Stouts and Imperial Porters, it's really very difficult to affect the colour of these ones with the addition of adjuncts and barrel aging and stuff like that. So just be aware of that. But yeah, this one looks pretty much as you would expect from an Imperial Stout. If we shine the light through it, as I say, it's pretty much black as night. You can see there's a little bit of a kind of Coca-Cola, Pepsi colour edge when you shine the light through it. Not much in the way of visible carbonation, 1 or 2 little bubbles just sticking toward the side down here. And as you could see when we poured it, we had very little head, but that could well just be down to the age of the beer. But it's usually, you know, at 9%, you usually do get a little bit ahead at that kind of level, but it's usually when you go up to, like, you know, 12 and 13 and stuff like that, that you don't see much in the way ahead. But there's just a kind of thin, wispy layer over the top, that kind of thicker ring around the edge of the glass. Nice kind of bigger bubbles and stuff like that. But yeah, looks quite nice, I have to say. Pretty much as you would expect from the Imperial Stout style. The 2 things you can really do with this particular style to you know, change the flavours and colours and stuff like that. You can do things like double mash, which gives you the really high alcohol, and you can also do the yeah, you can also do the a little bit of a longer wort boil and things. So we'll need to see from the aroma if we can figure out what's going on with this one actually. So as I always say, take a bit of time to enjoy the aroma of your craft beer before you get stuck in, because that's half the experience. So let's check out the nose of this one. Oh yeah, this is a proper kind of old school RIS, proper old school Russian Imperial Stout. You can smell that right away. And for me these days, there's a bit too much in the way of like pastry stouts. I'm not a great fan of these kind of marzipan-y, granola flavoured pastry stouts. I prefer, you know, the Imperial milk stouts, the Russian Imperial Stouts, the Imperial coffee stouts. Those are more my glass of beer, if you like. But yeah, the aroma coming out of this is very nice. So for me, yeah, for me, this is just proper old school RIS. It kind of gives you everything you'd expect. You've got a nice little bit of roastiness, you've got a bit of sweetness, you've also got a little bit of fruitiness, and you are still getting a little bit of hoppy character out of this as well. So yeah, let's just break this down for you and describe it a wee bit more in depth. So the backbone of the beer, you've got that lovely kind of roasty toasty yeah, you've got that lovely roasty toasty, well-fired backbone. It's not madly dominant in this beer. I think we'll get a bit more of it out of the flavour in this one. And this is one of the things you tend to find with these beers, is when they get a little bit older, you get more of this kind of silky, cakey, chocolate brownie sort of thing, and you're getting a wee bit of that out of this beer. And the fruits also tend to sharpen up a wee bit, which can be due to oxidation, and I'm getting a little bit of that out of this one. So hopefully not too much of that in the beer itself, but we'll see. But yeah, the backbone of this beer, lovely, roasty, toasty, well-fired bread crust. On top of that, you're absolutely getting a little bit of this kind of, you know, dense chocolate brownie, chocolate muffin type thing. Nice little bit of rye bread as well, in honesty. I'm getting a little bit of that kind of almost German rye bready quality out of this one. But yeah, on top of that, there's a mix of like brown sugar and different kinds of chocolate. So I'm getting like quite a high percentage cocoa chocolate, you know, a sort of 80-90% cocoa chocolate quality coming out of this beer, and that, I have to say, is really quite nice too. Pardon me. So yeah, that's coming out. That's definitely coming out of the beer. And then on the, you get a little bit of milky chocolate as well. There's a little hint of vanilla coming out of this one, but not too much. The chocolatey side of this beer is quite silky, and it is more of like a kind of 80-90% cocoa chocolate, as I've said. But yeah, for me, the brown sugary side of this beer, it's got a little bit of a kind of leathery brown sugar. It's also got a good little bit of kind of, there is a bit of a treacly molasses kind of thing going on with this one, and a little bit of a more toasty brown sugar as well. So yeah, the way that that goes together, I think, is it's really quite nice. So yeah, big oily, yeah, big sort of oily, treacly molasses brown sugars, toasty caramel, little bit of yeah, a little bit of a how would we say, yeah, a little bit of treacle and molasses in there. Yeah, you are getting one or two little very slightly nutty, woody notes out of this beer into the more that you smell of it as well, so that's quite interesting. But yeah, the way that this all goes together, I think, is really, really quite nice. So the aroma of the malty and yeasty side of things gets a thumbs up from me. Yeah, I do like how this one pieces together in that sense. Let's look at the hoppy and the fruity side of the beer then before we taste it. So with this one, you know, with this beer being, I think it's at least 2 years old, it could be a little bit more. I really forget when I bought these things, but these were left behind because they were left behind because they were Imperial stouts and stuff like this that would last. So yeah, for me, this beer, on the hoppy side of things, you are still getting the remnants of the green component out of this one. And remember, the longer you leave beer, the more the hoppy character is going to drop out of it. But you're still getting a little bit of earthiness out of this one. There's a little touch of herbal character there, but mainly a kind of smoother earthiness. There's a nice little bit of floral aromaticity, a little bit of grassiness as well. All of these are things that you would expect of the, all of these are like things that you would expect of the Imperial Stout style, and then you've got the kind of fruitiness sitting in behind there. So let's just look at that fruity part of the beer. So for me, if you sugar it up, you get more of the juicy side out of it. There's black currants in there. There's black currants. There's a bit of like blackberry and stuff as well. I've got a good little bit of raisin. There's some really nice, there's some really nice kind of plummy notes coming out of this as well. So a bit of raisin, a bit of sharper plum, wee bit of juicy fig as well, but yeah, black currants and blackberries and stuff like that. And these are all things that you would expect of an Imperial Stout. Some of the aroma out of this is making me wonder if there's been galena used in this one. I learned that fairly recently, that one of the really popular hops to use in these kind of American style Imperial Stouts is galena. And I've just been, I've been really just, it's almost been a revelation. I always wondered what the popular hops to use in these Imperial Stouts were, but it turns out galena is one that gives you all these lovely red fruity characters actually. So yeah, as I always say, take a bit of time to enjoy the aroma of the beer. I think it is about time that we try this one and see what it's all about. So yeah, after 2, maybe 3 years, something like this, this is actually, I'm actually going to taste the very first Tokyo Aleworks beer that I ever bought, which is strange to think. But yeah, this one is the Smashing Imperialism, a 9% Imperial Stout, old school RIS going from the aroma, brewed in collaboration with Napalm Death. This one comes to you from Tokyo Aleworks in Itabashi in Tokyo, the Japanese capital. Slàinte, skål, cheers, kanpai. Yeah, this is really nice actually. It's held up pretty damn well. That was a little bit of a worry. I mean, the 9%ers, when you go lower in the Imperial Stouts, they can be a little bit, susceptible to oxidation and things like that. But yeah, this one has held up pretty solidly. And as I suspected from the aroma, this one is a proper kind of just old school RIS. It's got that lovely roasty, toasty, high level bitterness to it. So yeah, this is quite nice. I know these kind of stouts are actually quite popular in Japan. It does remind me a little bit of the Imperial Stout from Mino Beer down here in Osaka. So yeah, pretty cool. So let's break this down then and describe it for you a bit more in depth. But it gives you everything you want: roasty, toasty, well-fired bread crust, bit of kind of bready character, some nice kind of smooth sweetness from the chocolate and the brown sugars, and also a nice little bit of fruity character as well. So yeah. So yeah, what I'm finding is the more sips I take of this beer, the smoother it gets, and you can feel it kind of warming up a little bit. This beer would be very, very smooth if you just let it warm up to kind of room temperature. I always think that Imperial Stout should be chilled a little bit so you can kind of enjoy that warming up process of the beer. Some people say you should always keep them at room temperature and just drink them straight that way. But yeah, I think it's always nice to have them just very slightly chilled and let them, warm up, open up and air up. Beers like this, the big strong beers like this, they need a little bit of time to air out and for you to appreciate all the flavours, in my opinion. And that's one of the benefits of doing these longer reviews that I do. So yeah, but this is good. So let's just break it down as we always do. We'll start in that middle third of the palate and describe things. So the backbone of the beer, as I've said a few times, is that roasty, toasty, well-fired bread crust, like a morning roll. It's kind of like that. So yeah, on top of that, toward the front of that middle third of your palate, you do get a little bit of woodiness coming out of the beer. So yeah, there's a little bit of woodiness in there. There's a little bit of a little bit of woodiness, a little slight touch of nuttiness in there, and then above that you get a kind of nice kind of rye bready character. You can feel that dense, almost German rye bready note coming out of this beer. On top of that, you have a little bit more of a kind of wholemeal brown bread. It's a little bit of a smoother wholemeal brown bread coming out of the beer too. So yeah, the way that all of that pieces together for me is really quite nice. Yeah, so the rye bready character, the wholemeal brown bread, and then above that you've got a more kind of silky, chocolatey type thing. So the silky chocolatey character is quite interesting because you can really feel a gradient of the chocolate. As I've often said, when it comes to your palate, more bitter and drier flavours are going to come out further back, whereas sweeter flavours will come out further forward. So in the chocolatey layer, what you're actually seeing is that the sort of 80-90% cocoa chocolate is at the back of that middle third of your palate, but then as you move further forward, it just kind of mellows out a little bit, and you start to get the you know, 70, you know, you start to get a sort of 60-70% cocoa chocolate note coming out of this one. So yeah, on the chocolate, yeah, the chocolatey notes are quite interesting, and the sort of darkness that you get from these chocolates, it almost comes across as being a little bit charred. What I'm noticing with this beer, I should say, is that the further you go into the aftertaste, the more of these kind of charry notes you get out of it, and that's great. But above the chocolatey layer, you start to get the brown sugar, and there is a little bit of a kind of leatheriness to the brown sugar. And what's in my subconscious with this beer is the fact that it's 2 or 3 years old. And what you notice with Imperial Stouts is that they do develop this more kind of silky, leathery sort of smoothness the longer that they age. So I'm wondering how much of that is playing a factor here. So yeah, you get this kind of leathery brown sugary layer out of it at this point, and then above that you can feel a circle in the middle of your palate, so you have this really nice kind of treacly molasses type note coming out of the beer. Yeah, lovely kind of treacly molasses type note coming out of this one. And then yeah, you also get, so yeah, you've got the leathery layer, you've got a toasty brown sugary layer, and then in the dead centre of your palate you have that treacly molasses type thing coming out of it, which I think really is great. I really do like how all of that kind of just pieces together. Yeah, the middle third of the palate in this beer, it's very straight up and very old school, I think we can say that. But this is one of these beers that just kind of gives you everything you want. So for that reason, it gets a big thumbs up from me. You can't knock this one at all, because it really does fit the style very well. You know, it's an old school RIS. What more can you ask for from this style? Yeah, so that's the middle third of the palate covered. Let's go to the back third of your palate then. So border region between middle and back third of your palate, you get a nice little bit of a kind of rye bready build up in there. Then you get the brown bread sitting on top of that, which is good. And then the base of that back third of the palate, as I often say, the back third of the palate gives you similar flavours to the middle third of your palate, just at different intensities. You've got that nice roasty, toasty, well-fired bread crust in there again. And then on top of that, you can feel the rye bready layer, which I was talking about. So that's taller and lighter and more airy. Taller, yeah, definitely taller, lighter, and more airy. And then you get the wholemeal brown bread sitting above that, which is really nice as well. So yeah, the wholemeal brown bread sitting above that is it's nice. Again, that's lighter, more airy. You can feel those bready layers are just a little bit drier there, but then you get some of the kind of chocolatey character just creeping over the top of that on that back third of your palate, and it's almost like the chocolate is kind of charred in this instance, and that's quite interesting. And then above everything else, you have this above everything else you have this really nice kind of I would say, yeah, you get this really dense kind of you get this really dense yeasty kind of character at the beer. So it's like a really dense and slightly sweet rye bready character. Then you get the wholemeal brown bread around it, which is a bit lighter and more grainy. Then a wee bit of a kind of toasty bread crusty note there. So that yeasty character is just sitting on the very top of that back third of the palate. But you can definitely feel the flavour is taller on the back third of your palate. Then as you move into the middle third of your tongue, it just kind of condenses down and squashes together that little bit more. So yeah, I do like how that pieces together for sure. So yeah, I think that's everything we need to say about the malty and yeasty side of the beer. I'm finding that this is getting sweet. It is getting sweeter and sweeter the further into the aftertaste that you go. But yeah, let's focus on the hoppy side of things then. So back corners of the palate, definitely a nice little bit of earthiness coming out of the beer there. Quite a strong earthiness as well. Wouldn't surprise me if there was a little bit of like English Fuggle hop in here as well. But as you move further forward, it's a little bit more herbal, and as you reach the front corners of the palate, there's a little bit more floral aromaticity, and round the front curve of the tongue, it's just a little bit lighter and more grassy. Of course, Imperial Stouts are not the most hop forward style of beer, and this one has sat in the bottle for a little while, so it's aged a wee bit, but you're still getting a little bit of that green component there, which is nice. You want your beers to be balanced, I always say. But yeah, front third of your palate then, and the fruity side of things. So the border region between front third and middle third of your palate, you get a nice little bit of kind of rye bready build up in there. You get a little bit of a kind of wholemeal brown bready character as well. The base of that front third of your palate, you've got the roasty toasty bread crust. You've got a little bit of the kind of a little bit of the rye bread, a bit of the wholemeal brown bread, and then you can feel the kind of silky chocolate just forming, sitting on top of the bready character there, and it's got a wee bit of a more milky chocolatey note to it, like 40-50% chocolate as well. And then you get that nice oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters just roll their way out of the beer. So yeah, the way that that goes together, I think, is really nice. Yeah, so fruity side of things then. For me, the fruity side of this beer is kind of as we described it in the aroma at the back of that front third of your palate. The only other thing I would say is you don't get so much raisin in the actual flavour of this beer. At the back of that front third of your palate, there's a little bit of a juicy plum. Underneath that, you get a little bit of you do get a little bit of like a kind of pruny, a more dry pruny note in there. Then as you move further forward to the middle of that front third of your palate, it's a little bit more kind of yeah, it's definitely got a little bit more of a figgy note in the middle. And then as you move into the front half of that front third of your palate, black currants underneath, and then just a little bit of blackberry on top, but not very tart. You know, berries, that for me, currants are very soft and juicy. Berries tend to be very tart, so not a lot of blackberry type character coming out of this one, I have to say. So yeah, it's really interesting how all of that pieces together. Actually, the way that this beer goes together, I think, is very nice. So gets a big thumbs up from me. Proper old school RIS, this one. It takes me back to sort of 2010, the 2010 era when I was just getting into beer, like 2011, 2012 and things. So yeah, this takes me back to the really old school stuff that I was trying, the first stouts from Brewdog and things like that. But yeah, gets a thumbs up from me. I really like this. So let's just round off this review then with a wee look at the mouthfeel. So for me, this beer, I'd say, yeah, top end to mid-bodied, bottom end to full-bodied. Not a lot of carbonation in this one, just a little prickle. And it has that typical Japanese cleanliness. I always talk about this here. I mean, it's a volcanic island, the water quality is great. Even in the big cities like Tokyo, they do have very good water quality. The Japanese are very, you notice that when you're here, they're very big on food standards, and water quality kind of plays into that as well. So yeah, you'll always get very good quality food type produce over here. So you can really feel that in the cleanliness of the beer. IBU wise, this has got to be 70 or 80 IBUs. I don't find it overly saturating. I don't think it's the 80, 90. I don't think it's the 90, 100 type IBUs, but it does have 70 or 80 IBUs, and a lot of that comes from the dryness of the malt, which is quite interesting. But the malt base, as we said, it's roasty and toasty underneath. You've got a lovely smoothness in the middle, and then on top of that, you have this really nice kind of dry sweetness, I think is a good way to describe it. You're getting a lot of silkiness out of this beer because of how old the stout is. As I say, stouts tend to go toward this kind of very silky, smooth type character, and you're seeing a lot of that in this beer. In terms of the hoppy side of things, there is a little bit of green component still there, but I think it's the malty side of things that's giving you most of your bitterness. Then you've just got a little bit of juicy fruity character. But overall, a really nice and enjoyable stout. Even though it's 2 or 3 years old, I think it's held up very, very well. And I would be curious to know whether they've done another batch of this actually, and released it in the cans. Most of the Tokyo Aleworks beers these days are released in cans, so I will need to keep this bottle as a little bit of a memento of doing this one. The very first Tokyo Aleworks beer that I ever bought, reviewed a couple of years later. So yeah, I think we can leave it at that for this one. This has been quite cool to review. I'm quite tired now, so I should end the video before I have been rambling, but yeah. So yeah, this one was the Smashing Imperialism, something we should all be behind. A 9% Imperial Stout from Tokyo Aleworks in Itabashi, in the northern part of Tokyo here in Japan. Really enjoyable, brewed in collaboration with Napalm, a band that I really do need to listen to. I've not really listened to those guys. Huge metalhead, but still not really listened to them. But yeah, thank you again for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comments section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Tokyo Aleworks, and let me know if you have any Napalm recommendations too. But until then, slàinte, skål, cheers, and see you guys in the next review. Ciao just now.